depression. It's kind of funny that I'm not getting more depressed talking about depression all the time. So, what's our third step? What can we do? Well, I've got a few that I think are hitting in this area of importance that are all part of the foundation. So honestly, these are not necessarily in order, but I really think that we can use these things, and I think they're all simple things we can do. Drink water, we covered that. We covered the science behind that. Exercise, we covered that. We covered the science behind it. The one that I'll have to do a little bit more research on is going to be one of the upcoming ones. See if I can actually find anyone who's done studies on it. I'm sure they have. This one, I'll find some studies and link them below, but I want to argue this one from an evolutionary standpoint. Nutrition. If you're eating crap food all day, you're not feeding your brain good, or you're not feeding your brain well. Sorry, Miss Boring. This one's going to have some jumps in it because I'm outside and every noisy person in the planet's going to be walking by. But if you're not feeding your brain well, you're going to struggle a lot more than if you were just simply eating right. Nutrition, I think, is a huge part of our mental health. And here's why. So evidence suggests that we evolved our brains after sort of discovering how to cook starchy foods, or how to process them in such a way that we can actually digest them. Now, starchy foods break down into sugars. Our brain tends to run on glucose. It needs sugars. Where's all this fuzzy stuff coming from? Our brains need sugar, glucose. It needs, those carbohydrates and stuff. That's what our brain runs on. So if we're not getting a healthy balance of proteins, carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are not the devil. They're not. It's literally how we evolved. One of the first things that we learned to farm were grains. Now, one of the reasons we learned how to farm those grains is so we could make alcohol. We'll cover alcohol in another video. It's not always super helpful for you. But it's important to have healthy dietary habits so that we're feeding our brain properly. There's a reason, there is science behind being hangry. You're basically dropping those blood sugar levels, and then your brain just is trying to tell you, look, I need food. I think something I read, and I'll look for that and make sure I have it right, but it said something like a third of our body resources is tied up in one organ, the brain. So if we're not feeding it, we're not going to be emotionally healthy either. And you can lead to a whole host of problems there. So it's important to have a healthy diet. Now, what kind of diet? Well, that's really up to you and what your body needs. An Olympic athlete is going to have different dietary needs than, somebody who works in an office all day. On average, what they recommend is, you need some protein. Average thing that I'm seeing realistically is about 50 grams of protein a day. Now, I'm a big fan of being a vegan, the vegan diet, just because I think to an extent you kind of are what you eat, and if if you're eating animals that have suffered their entire life, you're kind of taking part of that in. I think that's in that spiritual realm thing. But that even aside, you look at the chemicals your brain releases and all of these hormones that you release when you're fully under stress, and then think that you're basically taking more of those in when you eat this product that has basically been sort of saturated with these hormones, these stress hormones. So veganism is the way I approach it. It's pretty easy to actually have plenty of protein. Your legumes have tons of protein. The weird stuff has protein. Broccoli has tons of protein. So diet. When you're eating grains, you want to eat more of the whole grains. So I really advocate kind of a whole food, plant-based diet. Try to pick food that is as little processed as little as possible. This is what our bodies were evolved, what we have sort of designed our bodies to eat, these whole foods. And that's not to say you don't eat bread or you don't eat pasta or whatever, but just try to pick, try to limit the super processed stuff and try to eat more whole food. Eat lettuce with, if you're going to have something, have a small salad with it, or, you know what I'm saying. There's tons and tons of studies on nutrition and the effects on the brain. I'll link some below. But I really wanted to go back to this evolutionary standpoint that we have evolved basically because of how we were eating. We grew these amazing brains of ours that attack us. So from that evolutionary standpoint, it stands to reason that if our diet helped us evolve our brains, then our diet's going to help us maintain them. So that's number 3. Work on what you're eating. If you're eating a lot of super processed foods, chips and I'm not saying I don't ever eat chips and stuff like that. I totally do. I just try to limit that. And, listen to your body. If it's telling you you're hungry, you're probably hungry. Now, there is an extent where our body wants to kind of trick us and tell us it's hungry when you really have had enough. And part of that is, sometimes we'll eat large portions, and then, a lot of how our stomach signals us is due to that sort of contraction. So if you eat smaller portions more frequently, you'll find that you're not as hungry as often, especially after a meal. So just work on that part. So we've got our basic, hydration. You got to have that water. Our bodies are 70+% water. We've got our exercise. Your body needs to move. We've evolved to move. And then food. These are our 3 pillars. These are 3 super basic things. We're going to get into some more advanced stuff, but these are the 3 things so far that you can just almost instantly fix. Drink enough water, make sure that you exercise, make sure you're feeding your brain good food, okay? So that's it for now. We got more videos coming out real soon. You might see me in the same shirt and hat, because I don't care. Because I'm trying to shoot a bunch at once and then make sure they're edited really nicely. Get the dogs out. So work on that. I hope these videos piss you off. I've said that before. I hope they do. These things are so basic that we're not taught these things from an early age. Hydration, exercise, and food. That's basic. We might even talk about sleep, because that's another huge thing. We spend a third of our lives asleep. So work on those things, and I'll see you next time.